everybody, this is the extremely bright and somewhat loud version of the tech. We're shooting earlier in the day today, and you guys may hear some street noise because I live on the freaking street. So if we can all get past it, we can get down to business here. Wendell, what's going on?
Plus, also, it's that time of year where the sun is just out more.
I'm going to move away to avoid the sun. I'm moving to a place where it's rainy every day, 4 days a week. Every day it rains 4 days a week.
Everyone watching in Australia is confused now.
Like, mate, it's sunny here all the time. If there isn't sun, well, it's probably... there's always sun. All right, let's see what's happening this week, shall we? Probably nothing. Borderlands. Why is that the first thing up? Okay, so HTTPS. It's kind of a thing. Netflix is going to be moving to HTTPS for all their streaming. And, of course, there's lots of bickering and arguing going on about, oh, no, that's going to slow down Netflix and all that sort of thing. Well, it shouldn't slow things down, especially if we're talking like if the client, or if you know, like your browser is up to date. It shouldn't really slow things down. Maybe some of the older browsers and maybe some of the older protocols, but you know, new standards, HTTP2 and all that should be just fine running HTTPS at pretty much full speed. I don't know. What do you think about overheads for mobile devices or anything like that, Wendell? Probably, maybe a tiny bit, but not much. I don't know.
Yeah, not any sort of real-world computation device. It really doesn't matter anymore. The move from Netflix from HTTP to HTTPS is all about encryption. HTTPS is a secure internet connection, secure certificates, that whole mess is involved. This will prevent intermediaries from spying on the traffic. Now, they can still see that the traffic is to and from Netflix. They can still see what port the traffics are on, but which movie you're watching and that kind of thing, they can't see that. They can see that you're watching a movie or television or whatever, but they can't see what you're watching anymore. Now, right now, it's not encrypted. The only thing that's encrypted is your login with Netflix. And so when you're browsing around and clicking movies, your ISP can totally see that. Just like, it's like when you go to the library and like when the 9/11 happened and then the feds want to see your library record because that seems reasonable.
You've been watching you've been watching a lot of documentaries on thermite. Shouldn't they be asking why there's so many documentaries on thermite on Netflix in the first place? Go bother Netflix. Leave me alone. I'm just watching what's there.
We always turn it into the tinfoil hat thing. I don't know. It's science. Whatever. I don't know.
No, I said termites. You've got like you're watching. You're the guy in town. You got in big trouble because you turned termites loose for all the local establishments that you hate. That would be a great way to protest. Move to a wooden town, and then anything that you hate, you just become the termite man. But not the guy that comes and exterminates the termites. The termite man as in like... and then you get bitten by a radioactive termite. And then Marvel calls and gives you $2 million, and you're way more powerful than freaking Ant-Man. Who the hell is Ant-Man?
That's a really obtuse way to protest.
We need Ant-Man, and then we definitely need Uncle Woman. All right, I've ruined everything.
I don't even... Well, actually, that gives me an idea. If there are any aspiring, biology students or aspiring Dr. Victor Frankensteins in the audience, what we need is a termite that really, really likes all forms of cocaine, and then we need to go release them on Wall Street in New York, and that will solve a lot of problems. Because all the executives and bankers and stuff can't get their cocaine, and then
yeah, I didn't think we'll go to hell. Wow, that's okay. You've just figured out how to collapse the economy. So far in this episode, we've said terms like thermite, collapse the economy, Wall Street. The voice recognition algorithms are having a ball right now. So I want to say hello to all of the FBI agents in the audience. You are so welcome to come and hang out and join our community. We'd love to have you guys on the forum, even though you're already there. Just log in next time and say hi instead of snooping around like a bunch of weirdos. It's just strange.
I'm imagining that scene from one of the new Star Wars movies where it's like, you were the chosen one, and it's like the aspiring biology student staring down at his genetically modified termites that are supposed to eat cocaine and make society a better place, and it did not work at all. And it's like, you were the chosen one. You were supposed to.
Oh, this is the worst thing ever. All right, so more HTTP stuff. So, Mozilla, they want to drop HTTP support entirely, but the problem is it costs money to get your SSL certificates so that you can have the fancy HTTPS and be encrypted and secure and all that. That costs money. But could there possibly be a solution, and maybe Mozilla has an idea for a solution, Wendell?
Yeah, the Mozilla engineers were like, why? Why does HTTPS? Why does getting an SSL certificate cost money? It's all about a web of trust, a chain of trust. And Mozilla was like, we're Mozilla. We're huge. Why don't we, turn the world on its ear and do our own certificate signing authority thing? And so they've been working on that since November. And so there's a couple articles that have popped up and said, hey, should we think about maybe deprecating non-encrypted HTTP traffic in favor of HTTPS? And everybody's like, that's crazy. Nobody wants to fool with the SSL and, blah, 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 and the cost for that. But simultaneously, last November, we reported that Mozilla was working on, with the EFF and a few others, on creating their own certificate authority, which truly would let us have HTTPS everywhere. If both of those things happen, then we really could deprecate HTTP. It used to also be for a while that you needed one IPv4 IP address per SSL site, but that was really just Internet Explorer, and it hasn't been that way for a very long time. So most sites really could use SSL on a shared IP type setup, because that'll be really important as well. And so that's the other sort of component here, is that there's already an IPv4 shortage, and if we start going SSL nuts, then some people will be like, oh, I need a dedicated IP. There's not enough IPs. But there is actually a fix for using SSL shared on an IP. You just can't be running old Internet Explorer, but it turns out most of the web doesn't work on an old Internet Explorer anyway, so.
Man, I hope that happens. That would be amazing. Really good for security. And then we'll have, maybe it'll be illegal. Maybe that's the step that the old people who don't understand anything, maybe that's the step that they're going to take to try to prevent these sorts of things. They always try to prevent these sorts of things. All right, let's talk about, speaking of preventing things, I'm trying to stretch them for a segue here. Antitrust. Google is being investigated again, and this time it's for all the comparison shopping stuff. So the way it works is, when you type anything into Google, it comes up and it gives you a list of all the, you type what's like, I don't know, auto insurance. I'm not even sure if that's part of the EU thing, but it'll come up with a whole list of things, and this investigation is saying, well, we think Google may be favoring certain things, maybe certain things that they either own or have an interest in. And I mean, it could also be for like their web browser, they really don't like it when you're searching for a web browser, and whenever you just search for any other web browser, it says like, hey, maybe you want to install Chrome. So they're under investigation for that. And what else is going on with this, Wendell?
Well, the EU also announced today that they would begin an investigation into Android. And so apparently this other investigation has been going on for 5 years. And it's really around when you search for something on Google, you know how some things you search for on Google, you don't really get a normal search results page, you get something special. The EU is interpreting that as an antitrust type behavior because Google seems to favor Google services. And that's probably fair. That's probably a fair statement. Some of it, honestly, is owing to the engineering choices that the engineers have made, and some of it probably and what I mean by that is, hey, we're plugged into database A, B, and C, but vendor X won't give us their database, and so we can't make the search results as good as that. So we're just going to run with vendors A, B, and C because they will give us their database, and so it's sort of manipulating things around. But then also Google's done it with their own stuff, like web browsers, where it's like, hey, we have a web browser, and so if you go to google.com, you can get an ad, there's an ad in the top right corner, used to be, for Chrome. And so the EU was like, well, how would Microsoft get in the corner? And Google's like, what? What are you talking about? No, we only show this if you're using IE. And Microsoft can't buy an ad here because IE is, has problems. And so Google, being run by engineers, in that particular situation of IE, was just like, my God, we're having to support IE, and IE is so terrible. Let's just put a button in the corner that's like, oh, we see that you're using IE. Stop that. Stop using IE. And so there is at least some of that I could see how would maybe be interpreted as antitrust. But I'm sure there was also other antitrust behavior that's just an engineer saying, well, our stuff's better, we should just do it. And it's like, well, you may think your stuff is better, but that may not actually be the reality. And so they don't really consider that when they're engineering these solutions. And Google's getting better at that, but they're not. Historically, they're just too good at things like that. Not that I'm giving them a pass. Certainly don't mean to give them a pass. I'm really this was a 5-year investigation, but on the Android side of things,
I feel like they might be doing maybe a little favoritism. It just seems like it would be difficult for them to pass up. They've always sold search results. Like you can buy a spot at the top. It'll say like that, it's an advertised or a sponsored spot or whatever, but you can buy them. So I don't know. I don't see why they wouldn't wet their beak in this instance as well. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
No,
I think they're guilty. I think they're slightly guilty. Can they be slightly guilty? Like,
I think that's probably true.
They probably did a few things wrong.
So in the blog response, Google's really just talking about the Android investigation that just started today. There's not really any substantial response at all to the search comparison shopping stuff that we saw in the antitrust results investigation that Google's going to have to answer for. So in the blog post today, they're saying, well, Android is much more open. It's people can use it. They can opt not to use it. There are some conditions if you want some applications on Android, like Google Play, for example. If you want Google Play to be on your custom Android distribution, you have to agree to things. Now, Google's position is that that's so that they can avoid fragmentation of the Android platform, but it may also be that there are other conditions in those documents, and so the EU has asked for those documents that vendors have to agree to in order to have those special applications, so that the EU may check those documents to see if there are any anti-competitive provisions in there, like don't use Microsoft services, don't set the default search engine to anything other than Google and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see what they find. But Google didn't really respond to anything about the search allegations, so I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Let's keep talking about Android, but let's also talk about Microsoft. So Microsoft has decided to bundle some of its apps onto Cyanogen's Android OS. So Cyanogen, they've got their own OS now. They started off with CyanogenMod. Now they've got like more official builds that they're putting onto their own devices, and they're really a growing company. So I guess the big question here, the stuff that they're going to be including is Bing, Skype, OneDrive, OneNote, Outlook, which is interesting, and Microsoft Office. So they're going to be putting all that stuff onto Android. They've also partnered up with Samsung and a few other companies to put a lot of those same programs onto Android. So Microsoft is pushing to get their stuff onto popular Android devices. I guess the question is that making Microsoft better, or is it making Android better, or is it making Microsoft better and Android crappier? I mean, which way is it going? I think a few of these things will be handy for some people, but I guess the question is are they going to be mandatory? Like, is Bing the new thing? Do I have to use Bing? Does it come pre-installed and can I remove it? Is this going to bloat up my system? One of the beauties of CyanogenMod for me has always been the minimalism. It's just very vanilla with a couple tweaks here and there. So all this stuff coming bundled makes me worry a little bit. I want to be able to make sure I can remove and uninstall if I want to. I don't want Skype and OneDrive and all that stuff. So
this is just Nadella going all Sun Tzu on us, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so CyanogenMod sort of had a little spat with Google, and so Microsoft was like, "Hey, we've got station wagons of money. You want station wagons of money? We totally got it." And so thus it was born. We saw this once before with SCO Unix. With Linux, it was the Balmer vision of the enemy of my enemy is something confused, because that was the Balmer administration. So Nadella is a little bit shrewder, a little bit sharper, and so Nadella is like, yes, CyanogenMod. And I think that what Microsoft is hoping for is to fragment the Android situation even more than it already is. Google is really, Apple really is on top of this with their devices, which makes me it pains me to admit that. But Google is trying to get on top of fragmentation by making Android just the kernel. I mean, they're not really, but if taken to an extreme, they're trying to make it so that literally everything comes through Google Play, which is a pretty good strategy because the carriers aren't going to ever update anything. So it's like the carrier's like, all right, we've got our radio firmware, we've got the kernel, we've got a couple of other of our little bloaty, just bad things, but then everything else, the browser, the whole 9 yards, can be updated through the Play Store, because even Android 4.1 has critical vulnerabilities in the web view control and apps that use that, and it'll never be patched. It will never be patched. Just because the carriers are like, Android 4.1 is fine. We don't need to upgrade to Android 5.0, even though we've got 3 gigs of RAM in these devices and it's 2 gigahertz CPU. We don't need to update that. It's fine. And CyanogenMod was really popular, and so that they've sort of had a little schism with Google. Now we've got Microsoft in the mix. It's all about fragmentation. It's all about subterfuge. It's all about that. Not that I don't know that it's gonna, I think it's going to backfire on Microsoft. I don't think that they're really going to do any harm to the Android ecosystem. I think the Cyanogen people should totally take the money and do whatever they need to with it. I don't think that anything bad is going to, it's like if you're using Bing by default and you can change it, I'm sure that you can install an APK. So, I mean, come on.
Well, okay. You just said that it's going to backfire on Microsoft. It's going to backfire on them from their current perspective, but this could be a huge success in the sense that it will, again, give their software a lot of validity in a lot of different markets. They used to be, well, they still kind of are. They make their software for Mac, even though they're several years behind as far as like the Office doesn't have support for Exchange, ActiveSync, and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like, I don't know, guys, but I don't know. I think that it might be good.
For Mac is just, it's designed to be close enough that you can taste it, but frustrating as hell to use.
Yeah, it's like a spoonful of ice cream, and they're like, "No, you can't have the rest."
It's like a delicious vanilla bean ice cream. Like if Microsoft, not that Microsoft Office should ever be described this way, but if Microsoft Office is a delicious vanilla bean ice cream, and then you have the Mac version, it's that same delicious vanilla bean ice cream with a horrible burning tire aftertaste.
Oh God! Do you have the time?
It's Rant 30.
Rant 30, indeed. Verizon. They've just written this really beautiful blog on their website, and the question that they have posed is unlimited wireless data. Is it necessary? And so they've gone on, and what they're trying to do here is make people understand what's happening, because you go out there and you've got your wireless device and you're like, man, I just want to use the internet all day. And so here they sat you down and they're giving you like this paternal talk where it's like, listen, Timmy Tech TV. I don't know why I just said Tim. They're not talking to you directly, Tim. Like I'm talking like Tim, like a younger version of some other not you. Okay, Bob. Listen, Bob. The world is hateful. And there's not enough data, it's just there's not enough out there. And if you're selfish and use all of it, well, there's not enough that's, to go around. I'm totally paraphrasing, but they're like, listen, everybody gets home and they want to watch a bunch of videos and they want to sit down and consume for hours. And that is really selfish, because if everybody did that, so let me just read a couple of the best quotes. So, if everyone had unlimited data and used it fully, the performance of the networks would suffer because of the bandwidth restrictions and the shared resource nature of wireless. Yes, I understand. Everyone wants to share the resources, right? So in the next paragraph, they say, it's like a highway that needs to be widened for peak rush hour traffic, and this would require a major investment that someone would have to pay for. That someone being the subscribers. So they're basically saying, if you guys want all this stuff, then you're going to have to pay for it. And that's probably the most disingenuous thing I have ever heard in my entire life. They are kicking and screaming because they don't want to pay to upgrade their networks. And then they're trying to make you guys sound like selfish little brats for wanting to use what you're paying for, and that is the data. They don't want to make the highways bigger because they don't really care if you get all the data. They want to collect money with these tiny little roads and your limited access. But let's just take a look back here. There's a really great article here on TechDirt picking this thing apart even further than I'm picking it apart. But the main thing I want to look at, I want to go back to this article. It's from a long time ago, but Verizon, right? This is just a case study in Pennsylvania. They were given around $2.1 billion with a freaking B. $1 billion in tax breaks. The idea was that all the homes and businesses would have at least 45 megabytes per second. And they made this deal in 2004. 2004, they promised it. And they said, listen, by 2015, everybody's going to have 45 megabits per second. So how many of you guys in Pennsylvania have that? Oh, wait a second. They changed the deal. Halfway through, they sat back and said, listen, let's just change it up and let's make it 50%. But we're still going to keep the $2.1 billion in tax breaks. Thanks a lot. That was great. Yeah, we had a great steak and the CEO's got a limo. It's nice. They kept that. But you know what? The Pennsylvania government was like, all right, fine. So 50%. I want to know if 5% of you guys there have Verizon that is above 45 megabits per second. You probably
on the upload
don't.
too, because they said it was symmetric.
Yeah, symmetrical. Yeah, does one person out there in Pennsylvania even have 45. I'm sure a couple people do, but yeah. So that's one thing. And that's just in Pennsylvania, $2.1 billion. We could start looking even farther back and looking at the Telecommunications Act, how, the huge tax breaks they got from the federal government. We could look at case studies in New York and several other states. So they're trying to make it sound like all this stuff is really expensive and they don't have the money to do it. And if you guys want unlimited data, well, they would have to ask you guys to pay for it. And that's a terrible situation. But, in fact, they have been paid to do all these things. So Verizon, your stupid blog, God, I can't even believe this is on your website. It makes you look, oh, they already look pretty stupid. But it makes them look not even stupid. It makes them look nefarious. Because usually, you never trip up to, go ahead.
The other thing that he's suggesting is that because you have unlimited data, network management is out the window. I don't think that's true. Why would that be true? I mean, just because you only have, say, a gigabit of available bandwidth or whatever, that he's like, oh, we've got one person that's hogging it all and now no one can do anything. Well, I don't think that anyone is saying that you shouldn't have network management in a case of 1 gigabit. I mean, with 1 gigabit, 1,000 people could have 1 megabit. You don't have to give one guy 500 meg and then the other 999 people a fractional part of the remaining 500 meg. You could give everybody 1 meg in the 1 gigabit scenario. So, I mean, it's not untrue that wireless bandwidth is a little different than wired bandwidth because you don't necessarily have a lot of cell towers and blah blah blah. But if you want, if Verizon wants to do what they have done after they're in Jersey and there was a tornado or a hurricane or something and it wiped out all the wired infrastructure and they have
York,
already. Yeah, they were like, we're going to come back and we're just going to give everybody 4G home phone service, which, by the way, doesn't work when it's storming. It doesn't work when there's a lot of people trying to make a call. There was some event after that, and people were trying to make calls to see if everybody was okay. And because it was wireless, it just couldn't handle the capacity. Wireless is predicated on that, in terms of voice conversations, only like 1% of the people on the phone at any given time or 10% of them would be useful. And so when there's a natural disaster or something like that, the system really has trouble handling the volume of traffic. But then you have people like this who are in one breath saying, we don't have the infrastructure for it and, all this other kind of stuff. But in the other breath, they're like, oh, people are perfectly fine with 4G modems. And that, there's no network management doesn't enter into it if people have unlimited access. But that's completely untrue. So, one, they need to upgrade their infrastructure. Two, I think it's perfectly fine if they manage their infrastructure, as long as they have a reasonable amount of infrastructure. If you have 1,000 people competing for 10 megabits of backhaul capacity, then obviously that's a terrible situation. But if you have 1,000 people competing for 1,000 megabit, 1 gigabit, that's a much less bad situation. I mean, you're not going to be streaming, 1080p high def on 1 meg, but you could still stream video on 1 meg. So all 1,000 of those people could enjoy that. And with dial-up ISPs, it was pretty standard that you would oversubscribe between 10 to 1 and 100 to 1 in the dial-up days. And so it's really like the actual amount of bandwidth they need to provide really is not a large number, and people that are actually administering these networks will tell you that. If it's just some guy in a suit that actually has no idea what's going on, he's just making up stuff, because the less they spend, the more they make. And I've got news for you. All that infrastructure was already paid for by the U.S. taxpayers.
Yeah, but if we hold on to all this money, we can buy each other. That's really what's going on. They just want to buy each other, man. And other internet
news. If we turn it into a
news.
scarce resource, we can raise the prices. That's capitalism. It's like taking an abundant resource and making it scarce.
Mm-hmm. There's people out there in the data mines all day long. We got a special segment coming up about that. All right, this is the last thing we're going to talk about as far as, the internet. So the Republicans in Congress, they really hate this net neutrality, and the reason that they mainly hate it is because they quote unquote it's heavy-handed, and these heavy-handed agency regulations are going to slow internet speeds, increase consumer prices, and hamper infrastructure development, which is weird because as soon as this happened, the next thing that we see is the state of Connecticut saying, hey, gigabit for everyone, and they're using the reclassification rules under Title II. They're like, hey, we could just use all this, and now we can make everything work. So I don't know where the Republicans are coming off saying that it's going to slow speeds and hamper infrastructure development when we have almost immediately Connecticut's like, oh, let's just infrastructure everywhere. Let's just go infrastructure. Yes, entire state, fiber, gigabit, everywhere. Every home, business must have gigabit. So that's only one case study. This stuff is cropping up all over the place in Washington State now that the contract with Comcast is almost up in Seattle. Mayor, if you re-sign that contract, I will find you and I will give you a noogie in public. It'll be embarrassing. I'll do it. I just threatened the mayor of Seattle on the YouTubes. Tell the press.
Honestly,
so.
No.
I'm serious.
The mind reels. It really does. We will have
say no more. Say no more. You've said well. You just said it was perfect. A few him and haws and
tax data at the end of the year. So the companies that are actually spending money on their infrastructure, or the build out, at the end of the year, we will have that information in the tax data. So that's why this Republican group is in such a big hurry to get to add uncertainty to this. Because if you have these companies that are seeing this sort of waffling, they may not spend the money. But if we don't have the waffling, I guarantee in the tax data at the end of 2015, it's going to be enough to measure. So journalists out there, if you're paying attention, get ready, get the tax data for 2015 and look at how much capital expenditure there is in things like infrastructure build out. Because I guarantee that it's going to be insane as long as the Title II infrastructure build out protection for regions and cities is allowed. Because if Comcast and some other people are not allowed to do it, are not allowed to interfere with that anymore, it's going to be huge. And don't we have an article about the Verizon network to use as an example in New York City? I think it might have been mentioned in the Philadelphia article. But
yeah, I think it was in that. I'm not sure. I'll open it up here and see what we got.
The situation in New York City was Verizon was like, we're going to have FiOS across 100% of New York City by 2015.
By 2014,
guaranteed.
Yeah, by 2014. Yep. So that's already coming past. Like, does anybody have? I mean, I guess some people have FiOS, but how fast is it and all that? Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
it's
you used
crap.
to see. Yeah.
And Verizon is trying to sell off their FiOS. Like, they're trying to sell it because they're like, we don't want to. Landline is not profitable enough. Landline's not profitable enough, but we have Comcast and Time Warner with enough money on hand to buy each other, and they control pretty well, 47 and 36% of the America or whatever. And it's just, and it's like, oh no, wireless is more profitable because we don't actually have to lay wires. And it's like, this is an insane amount of profit.
Well, I mean, even after they lay the wires, like you were just saying, they don't want to turn it on because they're like, but we're making so much money not turning it on. We'll spend the money putting it in the ground, but we're going to sell it off to someone who doesn't want to use it because we don't want anyone to use it. It's really funny. It's so
they will sell it to you. They will sell you access to their fiber network for about $2,000 a month. You just have to go through the specialty corporate plans, and nobody talks about that.
Yeah, you can get on those in most cities. The other thing that's really funny is when you they were asking like different offices, like mayor's offices, and then offices in the state government and that sort of thing. They were like, "Hey, has Verizon held up their end of the bargain?" And most people were like, "Yeah, I think so." And then one government official was like, "Why don't you go over and talk to the technology department or whatever?" And they went and they talked to the technology department. The technology department's like, "I don't know. I guess Verizon's okay. Why don't you go ask the governor?" And they went and asked the governor, and they kept going back and forth. And finally, the office was just like, "Oh, it's we don't have any real comment on this. It's fine." So you guys are giving them billions of dollars in tax breaks, and you don't even have a comment on whether or not they fulfilled their end of the bargain. Fun. How much money do they give you guys? Oh, only a few grand? Come on, sell your soul for more than that. Let me just stop myself. So yeah, that's that. All right, let's talk about in-flight hacking. How about some of that? Isn't that fun? So there's a new report out from the U.S. Government Accountability Office, also known as the GAO, the GAO. But anyway, what they're saying is that it may be possible to hack into the on-flight Wi-Fi and take over an airplane And if they're using standard IP stuff, you can hack in from the ground and take over the entire grid. Hell, you can. It's like the worst flight simulator ever, or maybe the best, but the worst possible scenario for flight simulators ever. Now, the interesting thing here is the only thing that's been said so far, at least that I've seen, is a pilot who's also a digital forensics professor at Bloomberg University. How does he have time to do both? I don't know. Anyway, he said that to imply that because IP is used for in-flight Wi-Fi and also on the avionics network means that you can automatically take over the avionics network, makes about as much sense as saying that you can take over the jet engines because they breathe air like passengers, and there's no gap between the passengers who touch the plane and the engines which are attached to the plane. Okay, I don't know what that means, dude. That doesn't mean anything. That's just, what kind of speak is that?
We've learned from John Oliver. We've got to distill it down. We got to break it down.
What does that mean? All I really want to know is, okay, that you come back and say like, no, they're secured in this way, and they're not on the same network, and they physically do not touch everything that's happening in the cockpit that physically is separated. There are no wires on the same anything. They're not even on the same circuit. They're just. Tell us that. That's what we want to hear. Tell us that. Instead of saying something about like air and jet engines and you can take over them because you breathe the same air. Like, what kind of, is that an analogy or a simile? I don't even know. It's a mess.
I can break this down for you real simple. You've got a light on the overhead, and because you can hit the button for the light, you can control the plane's electrical system.
That's true. I actually, no, I can't. I don't want to, there's already enough verbal cues to get us in trouble, so I'm not going to say anything about this because we're going to China soon, and I don't need to be stopped before I get on the plane. So. Kane needs to be stopped, though. You guys should stop Kane.
I did read on one of the conspiracy theory websites about one of the planes that disappeared where the transponder kept transponding, but all the other stuff stopped working on the plane. And there was the conspiracy theory said that there was some evidence that someone had opened a panel somewhere on that plane and fiddled with the electronics on that plane, and that's why the beacon or whatever kept working but nothing else did, or there was a radar ping but the beacon stopped working, is because apparently the access panel for that was in or near a passenger accessible area. And so there may be things like that in the GAO report where it's like, oh, they're doing something really retarded, and we would have to sort of deal with that.
Well, I'm not worried at all because they spend billions in security at airports, and the TSA will 100% catch every criminal that comes through.
Today's opposite day.
It is. I'm wearing my pants on backwards. I don't know what that means. Let's just let's talk about France, shall we? Speaking of pants, let's talk about France. It's not a segue, but it kind of rhymed. All right, so anyway, the French National Assembly has approved internet traffic monitoring. They're going to be installing black boxes that monitor everything live. So everybody in France get a VPN. This is extremely troubling. It's only 30 out of the 577 delegates voted. But yeah, that's it. That's what really is troubling me. Yeah. What the hell? Well, I mean, we could make a ton of jokes about people not working in France.
No, if any joke is to be made here, it is that France has always gotten this kind of thing horribly wrong, because even all the way back to like Windows NT, you could totally disable all encryption in Windows NT by just telling Windows that you were in the France region. And it's like, oh, the France region. All right, let me just turn off all encryption. So like password hashing off, SMB signing off, executable stuff off. Yeah, even password hashing. I was like, we'll just store the plain text of the password. It's like, wow, that wasn't fixed until I think like 1999 or 2000. It was really, everybody in the server community was like, wow, really? If you there was actually some malware that would get your Windows passwords by changing your locale to from whatever it was to France, and then the next time people logged in, their hashed password would be overwritten with the plain text password or something like that. Oh my God. Yeah, it was really crazy.
Okay, I want to know from some of our audience in France, because I've always wanted to go over there. You know, my heritage, I guess 500 years ago from Lyon, my mother's side of the family. I've always wanted to go and see it and try some of the food. But this worries me because am I going to have to, run a VPN the entire time I'm there? And, what VPNs work over there? Just send me some information. Let us know in the comments. I'm very curious to know what you guys think of this. Are you guys going to be using VPNs? You probably should be. Or, yeah, that's wild. Are you going to move to Switzerland or something? I don't know. Somewhere else with a view. All right. Hey, let's talk about T-shirts. We got some new T-shirts. The shirt of the month. So I talked to John about the shirt of the month, right? He said that this one's going to be rivaling the bearded Viking shirt as far as
cool.
overall sales. So this one's doing well. Everyone likes the penguin, man. So yeah, you guys have about a couple more weeks to get the shirt of the month, and then it's gone. And it is gone. Now we're hosting our store on Squarespace, and it's been really easy to get up and running. Haven't had any downtime, and I like the way that everything just kind of gets out of the way, and it's all about your content. Your content is the centerpiece here, not a bunch of nonsense and flash and moving animations. It's just your content, and everything else flows around it. They have lots of different templates. You just pick a template and get started with it. Good for businesses, artists. If you're a musician, you can hook it up with Bandcamp, SoundCloud, Spotify, whatever. You can also just sell directly on here through the e-commerce platform. It's got a pretty easy blog. And this is something you guys might like. There's also a developer platform. You have full Git access, so if you're not happy with anything, you can always log in and tweak it to your heart's content. They are also hiring, so if you're a developer and you're ready to take the next step, check this out. Go to nycommit.com and you can apply. If they decide to interview you before April 30th, they'll fly you to New York and let you look around for a little bit. So check it out if you're a developer or an engineer. They're always looking to add good new people, and nycommit.com is the website you go to. When you're heading over to Squarespace, be sure to use the promo code TechSyndicate, and you'll save a little bit of money. Now back to the regularly scheduled tech. All right, let's get electric, shall we? Toyota's chief engineer says that he sees no practical future for electric cars. Kind of a shocking statement. It's kind of a shocking statement. It makes me think that, they may be going out of business or something pretty soon. I didn't say that. And
meanwhile, it's like Satya Nadella sees no future in PC gaming thanks to Xbox, and Apple, CEO Tim Cook sees no future in PCs. It's like, okay.
Good, great. Well, here's the thing: they make some electric cars, but this is a strange math problem here, and I want to see. I want to know how he got this. He says, if you were to charge a car in 12 minutes for a range of 500 kilometers, 310 miles, for example, you're probably using up electricity required to power 1,000 homes. That totally goes against the need to stabilize electricity use on the grid. Where does he get the number for that? Where, like, 1,000 homes? He doesn't say, 1,000 cars. So I want to know how much does it cost to power 1,000 homes? Does it cost that much to drive 310 miles or 500 kilometers? Is it the equivalent? Because if you're using the same amount of power, shouldn't it cost you as much? That's what that's okay. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe they're subsidizing the electric car market because that's what big oil wants them to do. No, I don't know. I mean, what am I missing here?
I don't think that he understands that most of the, not all, but so like the commuter case, the commuter is most of the types of drives and deliveries and things like that. If you take out deliveries and you're just talking about consumers need to drive back and forth to work, pretty much. And it's really not inconvenient for them to slow charge their vehicles overnight. Overnight, the electric grid is one of the least taxed times. So I really, we should build a mathematical model. Like, we could simulate this in software. We could totally write a program, take the data. There's all kinds of data from the California electric grid. We should do all of that because the California electric grid is held together with baling wire and duct tape. And so we could totally take that data, 5-6 years of data from California, assume California is the worst case scenario. We could build a computer model of this. We could do it. And I think even if we did that, even if we did all the insanity, it's like, oh, people stopping to fill up are going to break the electric grid. No, I don't think that that's the case.
So, yeah, and in the meantime, we got VW. They're they're releasing a new version of the VW bus. There it is, a restored very expensive little hippie van there. It just needs some curtains and some shag carpet on the inside, then you're ready to go. They're re-releasing it. This time it's going to be electric. There it is. Looks a little different, but I guess still the same principle. Yeah, I don't know.
Volkswagen bus is iconic. It seems kind of gimmicky, but we'll see if it's cool. We'll see if it becomes as iconic. It's like, look, this is the first.
On the West Coast, those things, you still see those things all over the place on the West Coast. There's a lot of strange cars that you see out there that you just only see on the West Coast. You get out there and you're like, wow, a bunch of like people who long hair and no shave, everything's cool. Just like, what's up, man? Got some kind of funny hat thing on, and they're like driving one of those things, like a Volkswagen Thing or something like that. And you're like, what is that thing? And you're like, yeah, man, it is. And they're like, oh,
hippies used to live in those. I don't know. It's like,
yeah. Well, they still do.
It's like hippies would live in the VW bus. But why would you do that when you could have gotten a Chevy Chateau for the same price? You could have a party in a Chateau, and it would be completely fine.
And you'll go Chateau d'If afterwards. Moving right along. I think we're running a little long right now, so I'm going to skip the Sony hack. I'll just mention it quickly that the Sony hack, well, yeah, you can get the software they use for about 30 grand from a Russian hacking firm. So, yeah, get out your wallets, man. Buy that up. Speaking of things that you can buy with your wallet, nefarious things, there's an article here, well, not an article here, just I guess a group of Swedish, or not, it's Swedish, but Swiss art group. They got together and they bought a whole bunch of stuff in 4 months on the dark net. Dun, 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 dun.
We covered this once before, but it was like, hey, what did they actually buy? This is a photo gallery. So if you want to hear about whatever, go look at the old article or go find the old episode. But here's the pictures of
it.
They decided that maybe they should turn it off. Well, it was all fine, and then it was like, wait a minute. I think they also mentioned they got a passport too, but that wasn't listed, so I don't know what to do about that.
They got a platinum visa. Does Visa even come in platinum? Does a platinum visa mean anything? It's not like an Amex platinum, is it? Oh.
It's probably some sort of reverse fake credit card where using it will like mortgage your house to the bad guys or something.
Bought some ecstasy.
I don't think that's possible.
So, I mean, here's the reason I even wanted to bring this up. I think it's a pretty bad thing. I wish they hadn't done this, because now all the powers that be are going to look at this and be like, see, the Darknet. It's a dark place. Well, most of the internet is the Darknet. It's just stuff. Anything that doesn't really show up on a search, in search is pretty much the Darknet. So they're going to blanket it all together. The Darknet's going to be evil. Everything that happens in the Darknet is evil. Anyone who uses it is a hacker and could go to jail and all that kind of. It's really bad. But if we took like the same idea and applied that to, hey, look at all the things we bought with money, just regular green American cash for the last 4 months, we could have some really messed up stuff. We could have a photo gallery with human trafficking, drugs, murder. You can use these things for good. You can use them from evil. The choice is yours and all that sort of fantasy nonsense monologue insert here. But they're going to see it in this one light. The dark side is the Darknet. So it's sad. Anyway, moving right along here. Google. They've patented the ability to control a robot army. Call Kane. We need him to do the Skynet thing right now. We need him to do the Skynet thing. So they started off with a patent a few months ago that it was a patent to give robots personalities. It was these little life forms. It was that chip. It was the personality chip, like they gave Data. And was it Generations? Was that the movie or something else? I forget. Anyway, the personality chip, essentially, they patented that to give them a little bit of personality. And now they've patented a way to use the cloud to control large numbers of robots. And there's really no limit to the patent. Here they speculate, well, that could be used to control a room full of Roombas. Isn't that like I thought that was like some sort of workout dance everyone's doing in Miami, the Roomba. I don't know. Anyway, but it could also be used if they wanted to. The same sort of a patent could be applied to controlling a giant army of robots for military purposes. It could be used for pretty much anything, Well, in that line. It could be fun.
Every time there's like a graduate student who has like an army of drones or any kind of article like this, my mind immediately goes to Mickey Mouse and Fantasia with the brooms, because that's exactly how it's going to be.
All right, let's talk about AMD, shall we? They might have a new 16-core chip, and it's going to be an APU. There's a leak slide. Everything that's on Fudzilla is correct. Wait a minute. I don't know about that. They get a lot of leaked stuff. I think Fudzilla just goes and drinks around the country with a bunch of important people and then makes up stuff and makes their own sheets sometimes. Anyway, here's what they have. 16 Zen cores and up to 16 CPUs, 32 threads. And you guys can see the details here. I'll open this up so you can see it a little larger. That's kind of interesting because AMD, they've been sort of out of the game for a little while. They've had the same architecture as far as the really powerful architecture, they've had it for like the last 5 or 6 years, right? So I guess these are still similar. They're Zen cores, but they need to do something.
Well,
16 cores would probably help them.
It's not the 16 cores. I think it's the ungodly amount of cache.
The L3, yeah, the L2 and L3 are like crazy.
So
2 megabytes of L3, 8 megabytes of L2. That's crazy.
If this is coming out in like 6 months, it's going to be great. If this is coming out in 2024, we're going to have problems.
Yeah, that'd be sad. Maybe they'll still have their graphics cards going, though. I'm waiting on that 390X. All right, what's next on the menu today? Oh, take a look at this. So in the last video, I kind of yelled just a little bit about Seagates, but I decided to choose HGST for our systems and also for our upcoming NAS. I've got 10 of them. Where are they? Under the desk somewhere. I've got 10 HGST 4TB drives and 3TB drives are in all of our systems here. Mainly because of the reliability. And Wendell, you've been having some trouble with some of the Seagates. The 3TB drives seem to fail quite frequently. And now, Backblaze, their huge data center, they've decided to pull their Seagate drives. And let's take a look at the results here. 4,190.
They're not waiting for them to fail. They're pulling them. That is how bad they are.
So there's 4,190 were deployed. Only 251 are still in service. So they pulled some of them, but the actual numbers as far as how many failed were 1,342, giving them a 32% failure rate. That's about what you were experiencing. About 1 in 3 was going bad, right?
Yeah. Well, at this point, I'm not sure if we have any left in service. In the first year, about 1 in 3. They refer to this as like the bathtub failure curve. And so what that means is you plug a drive in and you run it real hard for like a week. And so the failure rate, ramps up. Like it's going to die within a week. And if it survives that week, it's basically good from now until the end of time. Not really, but I mean, like when they start failing catastrophically. So that's the other side of the bathtub. And these drives are not like that. It turns out they die. And they die fast, and then they keep dying, and they won't stay alive.
Then they come back as zombies and die again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've RMA'd. There's like 2 or 3 drives we've RMA'd 5 or 6 times because they were one of the first ones. The first because we were like 3 terabyte drives are out. Let's order them. And those particular drives had 3-year warranties. And so we've got a couple of those that we've replaced like 3 or 4 times. Like we just gave up. We're like we're not gonna. It's like we put it in, and it's like, oh, it's working, and then a week later, it's like, oh, it's dead.
It's like the amount of time that you're investing, paying interns to swap out drives, and then having to deal with clients who have bad drives and all that stuff. You're probably wasting more money just in time as a resource than you would if you just threw it away and got an HGST. So I went with the HGST here for my builds, and I feel very gratified in my decision. Those things are nearly bulletproof.
Well, the 4 terabyte ones oddly didn't die. I mean, we bought a few of the 4 terabyte drives when they were ludicrously expensive, but it was like 3 terabyte drive, okay, 4 terabyte drive, twice as expensive. Nobody buys those. And Backblaze, that's one of the gaps in the Backblaze data is that they don't buy the drive until it makes economic sense. We're crazy people, so we bought some of the high capacity drives just to fart around with them, and they don't seem to have the problem, and so I don't really understand what's up with that. This article talks a little bit about the flood. There was some flooding in Thailand, and it affected a lot of facilities, but it didn't really affect Seagate, and so it's like maybe that has something to do with it because they were like, look, we can cut corners, or maybe it had something to do with their suppliers. We don't know. But 3 terabyte Seagate, internal, external, it does not matter. They are crap.
All right, speaking of high capacities, I am really excited about this. Corsair has added 960 and 480 gigabyte capacities to their Force LS series of SSDs. This is like sort of their lower cost line, lower cost than compared to like the Phison controlled stuff, but the speeds are not that much different. I mean, up to 560 and 540 on the read and the write, and the IOPS are 84,000 and 88,000. These are really nice drives, and I've had a chance to play around with them. Like I said, they're not quite as crazy as the Phison. They don't do sustained like the Phison does. The Phison can sustain like, there goes that guy. The idiot meeting was 20 minutes ago. He's late. But yeah, having 960 and 480 at a price point of 380 and 190 is awesome. So I think these are going to be pretty easy to recommend. And having a 480 gigabyte drive for under $200 is really nice. That's in the, I guess, the size and the price range where you can justify buying one of those, throwing it in a gaming rig and just loading it full of games. If we keep getting more of these good console ports like GTA, you can put like 2 games on there. Why are they always so bloated when they come over from console? It's weird. It's weird. They just bloat them up. They're trying to fill up that Blu-ray or something. I don't know.
It's certainly an exciting time in SSD stuff. So if you're using a Samsung Evo, they've got, I think I forgot to send you this article. If you're using a Samsung Evo, they slowly get slower over time, and Samsung is still working on a fix for that. They had a fix, and the fix was really just a Band-Aid, and now they're actually having to redo some things, and so they're hoping to fix that. But the other thing that's causing the prices of SSDs to come down is the new standard, which, like the new version of the standard, which is kind of sort of like the M.2 on steroids, but you see it everywhere, is NVMe. And so Intel and Asus have been really coming, like Intel's got a new thing, and Asus has been doing some stuff with it. You see this in Dell servers as well. They've got this new interface, NVMe. Electrically, it's a new interface. They're working on new physical connectors, but some older Dell servers use serial attached SCSI type connectors. But that's not a perfect fit in terms of bandwidth and the electrical characteristics of that. So they're working on that. Those are going to push 2-3 gigabytes per second in the first generation of devices that are out for that. And so 2-3 gigabytes per second per device read and write speed is ludicrous for SSDs. And so I can't wait to get my hands on some of that.
You guys ready to talk about some science? I think we should talk about science. All right, let's move over and talk about anti-aging. So it is likely that we are getting close to reversing aging or stopping aging. Now, here's the guy, Aubrey de Grey, and he's a Cambridge. What does he do at Cambridge? I've lost my spot here. Well, he's a smart person at Cambridge. Anyway, a couple of things that I think are interesting here. Everyone talks about immortality and that sort of thing, and he mentions that we need to stop using the word immortality. That's completely ridiculous, because all we're doing here is we're trying to cure aging. We are not saying that you're not going to, an airplane's not going to fall on your head or something like that. That's ridiculous. So stop using that word, number one. Number two, here's what he's figuring through his research. He's trying to, wrong thing on the screen. He's trying to develop a method so that the cells that lose the ability to divide stop multiplying, and then only the healthy, good cells multiply and replenish the tissues. So if he can figure out a way to do that, and apparently he says that, he's getting somewhere with his research. If you can find a way to do that, you can pretty much decide, like, how old you want to be, and you can be 30 forever. That's interesting. So now the thing that they're really going to have to figure out is how to, make someone, if they're like 60 years old, how to make them younger again. So I guess his research might be able to help out with some of that, but I don't know. He's saying that we could see it in our lifetimes.
The thought experiment that sort of made us mention this is, the question was, has the person who will be able to escape the ill effects of old age already been born? And the guy was like, there's probably about an 80% chance that one of the first people to escape, the ills of aging has in fact already been born, because the science is moving that quickly. I mean, think about it. Don't think about it from a biological standpoint. Think about it from a computational standpoint. if we have the mechanism and the machinery to see inside the mechanical aspect of the cell, and we have a pretty good map of the software that runs the cell, we own the system. At that point, we can root the system, and then it's all over. So, robot, zombie, vampires, or aging, whatever the outcome will be, we will have it.
All right, you want to get really philosophical? If this technology comes out before we're dead, and they are able to reverse aging and whatever, would you want to stick around, or would you be like, you know what, let's just give back to nature and then leave it alone and move on and let the rest of the world have whatever they're going to have in the future? What do you think?
I think that society would be a really interesting place if people lived for 500 to 1,000 years. I think they're with this type of anti-aging thing, I don't think that people will be able to live indefinitely. I do think that it would be pretty easy with this type of technology for people to live to be 150, 200, and I don't really see a problem with that.
All right, let's go and look at some more interesting stuff. So DARPA has the cortical modem. They're always developing some crazy stuff. So the interesting thing for me here is that this is an implant. It could restore some of your vision. It gives you a direct neural interface with the brain. I guess a neural interface would be an interface with the brain. It is a direct neural interface, but it allows you to, I guess, put an overlay over what you're seeing. It's almost like augmented vision. But it also, they say, will give you some, they said telekinetic properties, but in a technology sort of way, Interesting. I don't know really what the overall implications. I can't even begin to speculate without a big table and a beer in a couple of hours. Then we could sit around and make up a bunch of scenarios. But go ahead.
I don't know how you would sort of learn to do it. It seems like this thing would have to be hooked up to some nerve cluster somewhere, and so nerve clusters for sending signals. Don't most of those go toward muscles? I mean, wouldn't you have to give up the use of some muscles somewhere? I've read the articles where, the guy has a prosthetic arm, and they've taken some of the neurons that were hooked up to shoulder muscles and hooked those up to the prosthetic arm instead. And so then you can relearn using those neurons to conduct the signal. Then you can sort of relearn how to control your arm, and that's an option. But the neural modem makes it sound as though your brain will recognize this as sort of a new input device. But the brain's not really plug and play. So I don't know. I mean, there's younger people can have this, but older people can't learn how to, their brains are set and can't learn how to deal with this. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting.
All right, let's move on and talk about gaming. Sun's almost gone down here, so my lighting has totally changed. I kind of like this darker lighting. I don't know, it's nice. Anyway, first thing I want to bring up, this is really funny. Tecmo, they brought the new Dead or Alive 5, whatever it's called, Extreme something. I haven't played these games since part 2, because then they got kind of just weird. I mean, it's like you're playing this game, and it's like, I guess there's a game in there somewhere, but it's pretty much hentai. That's the way I always felt. I was like, why did people even get into this? But some people use it for things, and we shouldn't judge. But apparently Tecmo is judging, even though their game is, even without the patch. Here's what happened. They gave it to the PC market, and they're like, be good, you guys can mod it, but be good. And of course, the first thing that happened, well, not one of the first things that happened, people weren't good. And now there's naked mods on the internet, and they're sending out DMCA notices like crazy, and they're getting angry. And all I'm saying is, guys, your game already is... Let's move on. I don't even care, but it's just funny. It's almost hypocritical for them to yell at people. I think nudity is almost more artistic than what you guys are doing. At least you can pretend it's art if they're like, hey, make it. It's a black and white nude mod. It's art now instead of wearing scantily clad clothing and being. All right, so let's talk about data. So in the new Mankind Divided, you will be able to go through the entire game as a ghost, just like in part 1. It was beautiful. You can skip boss battles. There'll be multiple ways to get through them. One of the things that I actually hated about the last game was that when you came to the boss battles, that was it. It felt almost like an old school console game where now we're in boss battle mode, and it doesn't matter how you've been playing the game up until this point, you must now fight, and it's the only one outcome can be either you dead or them dead. Well, in this new game, you'll be able to play the game however you want, including the boss battles. You'll be able to sneak by or talk your way through it or whatever. I don't know. That makes me really happy. I'm actually looking forward to this now. I just hope they get rid of the cover system. But yeah, that
will be a lot of fun.
Most people like the cover system, so I don't know.
I feel like the Batman, the first Batman Arkham game got this right, but they should have taken it to an even more extreme. So it's like you can, be Batman and take out the bad guys one at a time, because Batman knows where they all are in the dark, and then the other bad guys are like, wait a minute, where are my friends? And then they start freaking out, and it's like, that was really good. They should take that to an extreme in this game where you can see all that and monitor all that with your augmented stuff, and then be like, I'm just gonna knock you out and then put you in the vent here. But the guy could wake up randomly, because that would happen in real life. And then he's like, what's happening? I'm in the vent. I don't understand. And then it would be a distraction. That would, and then everybody would run to that guy, but you would be somewhere else. I mean, that would be really interesting.
2K Australia, they're closing down. So everyone who worked there, sorry about that. They were thinking about moving to Melbourne for a bit, but they never did. It looks like the problem was they were having trouble getting talented developers. Maybe they're all doing indie games. Maybe maybe they need better. I don't know why are there pretty good game developers in Australia? I mean, are like independent individuals? Are there good coders over there? I don't know. They seem that seemed to be their biggest problem, and some of their high level talent left. So I don't know.
And that's why we'll ask is like, did those guys go become freelancers? Did they become
what are they working on?
Indie game? What are they working on? Does this have anything to do with Australia's unbelievably awful internet?
Yeah, it could be. It's sad to see a studio close, especially because they were making some fun games, and it's also sad to know that a lot of different developers will be out on their ass. And I'll say this, guys, you may have just lost your job, but don't let that get you down. Think about what's next in your life. All those projects that you weren't able to do because you were working for a big company like that, and they were like, no, you must do this. Start thinking about them again. Start talking to some of your friends. Maybe you guys should get together, form a little company. Maybe you don't have a lot of money right now. Eat ramen, start making a game, put it on Kickstarter, make some things happen. Pep talk. Yeah, do it. Yay. That's it. All right, that's the end of the show. If you're still here watching, well, then you deserve a popsicle. Go get yourself a popsicle. If you live somewhere cold, well, just have a nice warm popsicle, or otherwise known as juice. All right. We'll see you guys sometime else. Yes. Bye. Stop watching.
Why are you still watching? Go away.